Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Church in Fall River. Happy New Year.
Good morning. May peace be in your hearts. The energy of freedom, the warmth of love, the fullness of being alive. And in that fullness find peace. Through justice and understanding that humanity be at peace, may all of life on earth live together in balance and peace. Good to be with you all this morning. Glad to be back. As I did another time, it's always great to see you all. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, which means to me that we are a support community, people on various journeys towards ultimate goals, such as peace, or liberation, or union. And one of the ways we support each other, at least when we're at our best, is by getting out of the weeds and seeing things from a bird's eye view. The alternative of seeing things in the weeds, being in the weeds, or hacking around, you can't see the way forward, but out of the weeds, you can see the path that's gotten you to where you are now, you can see where things are now, and you can see your path forward. One example of this in our history is from Reverend Peter Parker. A few years before the Civil War, and just after the Supreme Court had laid down the Dred Scott decision, Peter Parker was addressing an anti-slavery convention in Boston. The Dred Scott decision, as I noted, was could be seen as a gift to those who want to continue to own other people, and a setback to the abolition movement. So Peter Parker addressed this convention looking at the state of the world and how anti-slavery movements were growing and making progress around the world. And he saw that it would be inevitable in America as well. And he ended his comments with the famous line, "The universe bends towards justice." getting out of the weeds and seeing things from a global and universal perspective. Today's service aspires to that kind of perspective taking. It helps us see a way forward when times are difficult. And on your journeys, I hope to support you such that you live with love and freedom, and live the full richness of being alive. The service today involves the theme of sharing and its history, and there's a lovely hymn that refers to sharing. It's number 402. It is a, I don't know, long, drawn out hymn. So we're going to sing it 3 times. 402, integrated. Invite us to read together the affirmation entered in the word of service. Love is the doctrine of the church. Bless the truth is the sacrament, and service is the prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve unity, to defend that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Because we belong to each other and to God. At this time, we have announcements.
Download was taken in the parking lot today because somebody pulled the right from me and stopped. So he was coming out to give them what for. But he was actually helping an elderly person into the church next door. I didn't know that before we were on out. So I wanted to say also thank you so much, Ken, for being here today. In fact, I wrote a tires, I'm sure your sermon, into one that I read in October, because I experienced so much about that yesterday, and what you're talking about is the same thing, so I'm doing that very much. And I wanted to let people know that although Ann Fox has had an accident, she died, and she won't be able to be with us next week. Claire Dodson will be here to take her first.
That's in 2 weeks.
Yeah, because Ken Langer's here next week, sorry about that. Ken Langer will be here next week, you all know Ken, so Ken and Ken, back to back. Thank you.
I got a text from Walter Whitehead last night. Hey Jim, I'm staying home tomorrow. I'm recovering from pneumonia and still coughing quite a bit. That plans on going. Maybe you and her, it would be nice to announce that back porch is at the Belmont Club this Friday night. Thanks. So, Friday, 6 o'clock at Belmont.
So a week from tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day. We are sponsoring, along with the Our Revolution, Greater Fall River, and Temple Without Fellow, a peace meal. We moved it up to 2 o'clock. It was set up at 1:30. We've done that to accommodate folks not having to go home after the other activities that are happening in the community. So I encourage you all to put it on the calendar, come at 1:30. Bring something if you can to share. If you want to let me know what you're bringing, fine. Otherwise, we'll just take what comes. And I'm sure it'll be a wonderful evening. Also, Also, just for your information, there is a full day of activity in Fall River, breakfast at 8:30 at Bristol Community College in the Commonwealth Building, around the back side of the campus. That happens from 8:30 to about 11. And then Bethel A&E, Fall River Black Church, at Hanover and Maple Street does a traditional gospel kind of service. We've invited that congregation to join our festival. Hopefully there'll be some folks coming in like us. They're not sponsors, they're guests, so a few came last year, we're hoping will come this year. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Nancy. In my first reading, the Old Testament book of Samuel recounts King David coveting the beautiful Bathsheba, wife of Uriah, a soldier in David's army. To claim Bathsheba, Samuel recounts, in the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it he wrote, "Put Uriah in the front where the fighting is fiercest, then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die." David's ploy worked. Samuel goes on. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. My second reading. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." "But we here have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them to me," he said. And he directed the people to sit down in the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people, and they all ate and were satisfied. In silence, We can make ourselves available to support from spiritual sources. We can sense support from this gathering of caring people. We may find peace. Let us take a minute for silence. Amen. Another hymn that has an echoing theme of sharing is this one, number 131, Love Will Guide Us. I invite us to sing together. We'll just sing this one time. Thank you. You might be like me, needing support as our government abandons its support for people, attacks our rights, helps polluters poison us, raises prices, wrecks international trade, dismisses science, rejects international rules, appeases autocrats, crumples the Constitution, kills Americans, lies about it, attacks another nation, and threatens further violence. Naturally, I view these horrors with the expression of the figure in Edvard Munch's The Scream. At times, but I didn't want that to be my permanent condition. Personally and politically, I do better when I'm out of the weeds, where from a bird's eye view, I can see the path that's gotten us here, see our current predicament, and a path forward. The path that's gotten us here began with the origin of human history. If we condense history to 1 hour, for 58 minutes, we were hunting and gathering. Those 58 minutes show human nature to be cooperative and willing to share. When Columbus met hunters and gatherers, he observed, when you ask for something they have, they never say no. To the contrary, they share with anyone. Nature made sharing easy by providing food, water, tools. They lived in egalitarian societies. If someone rose to leadership, the group would keep them humble. Someone in a Kalahari hunter-gatherer society explains, "We refuse one who boasts, or someday his pride will make him kill somebody. So we always speak of his meat as worthless. This way we cool his heart and make him gentle." Hunter-gatherer life was generally peaceful. Fossils show that 2% of deaths were human-caused. I imagine as a downside, hunter-gatherer life involved insecurity. People could find the food they needed, but they did not control the sources of their nourishment. Nevertheless, primal life was not so bad. As evidence, in colonial America, when European Americans were abducted by indigenous people and then rescued back to civilization, many fled back to the woods. Then, in our hour of human history, 2 minutes ago, we began farming. At that time, about 15,000 years ago, in the ancient Near East, a warmer climate made farming easy. Drop a few seeds into the silty floodplains and crops grow. With plentiful and predictable food, it made sense to sink roots, build houses and cities. As agriculture proceeded, at some point, someone enclosed a piece of ground and claimed, "This is mine." At that moment, a side of human nature emerged that wants ownership. As with hunter-gatherer life, ownership and civilization have two sides. I like the predictable control of owning food in the fridge and a place I can lay my head at night. But there are downsides. While sharing is communal, ownership isolates. Owning requires protecting what one owns, causing owners to suspect other people as potential thieves. With ownership, more is better, encouraging accumulation. The objects owned expanded from land to grain to livestock to people. 3/4 of people in ancient Athens were enslaved. In families, men owned wives, parents owned children. One rule of ownership: you can treat your property any way you want. Therefore, wives, children, and slave people could be beaten. Violence was further used to take more property. Deaths by human violence increased from 2% in hunter-gatherer time to 7%. Successful warriors were elevated into leadership where they accumulated power. Power has the effect some blows to the head do to disable parts of the brain, turning a nice person into a ruthlessly insensitive person. Indeed, when struck with power, people become shamelessly arrogant, reckless, self-centered, and impulsive. A study of people's driving behavior shows the effect of power. When subjects were given an inexpensive little car to drive, they all stopped for people at the crosswalk, Confederates in this study. The same people behind the wheel of a Mercedes or BMW, almost half of them blew past crosswalk pedestrians. Humanity has proceeded through recent centuries with sharing continuing in tension with ownership. Consistent with ownership, kings own land and people and use violence to conquer more. Yet the story of David's treachery, King David's treachery to own Bathsheba, critiques kings and their ownership. David's ownership is contrasted with Jesus sharing loaves and fishes. At its founding, the United States rejected rule by kings and gave us instead government of the people, by the people, for the people. However, when the Constitution was enacted, 1/4 of Americans were enslaved, and most states limited voting to property-owning white males, about 6% of the population. Governments such as the United States focused on trade and war, good for owners, funded by excise taxes, customs duties, sales of land, and tariffs, largely shielding owners from taxes. On the other hand, the Civil War constrained ownership by outlawing the ownership of people. Other countries abolished slavery. On the other hand, countries still held colonies, a form of enslavement. In World War II, Germany and Japan sought to conquer, colonize, and own swaths of Europe and Asia. When they were resisted, that questioned the logic of England, France, or the US, or other countries owning colonies. And indeed, colonies shed their colonizers. Furthermore, the post-World War II world created international structures: the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, the International Declaration of Human Rights, guided by the belief that when we all share this world, seeking to benefit everyone, life goes better than with ownership run amok. Governments added to their responsibilities: public health, education, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all sharing the benefits of society with many. Then we get to today, with ownership returning with a vengeance. Autocrats in the world work to own more and so dismiss impediments, such as the post-World War II rules. Rejecting the UN Charter, one autocrat invades Ukraine. Another decides to run Venezuela. Within each country, its autocratic owner makes the rules that enable one to draw wealth from the nation's resources and people's labor. Such owners resemble colonizers, only this time homegrown. Our own strongman gets away with autocracy because he supports the owning sought by many. As I see it, those who own much and want to own more see him as their enabler and prop him up via media outlets and politicians they own. Those who own less and want to own more are seduced by the promise of more and so add their support to the owner-in-chief. Unfortunately for this latter group, those who own much have been the winners, as the richest 0.1%, about 300,000 Americans, own 14% of America's wealth, while the least wealthy half of the country owns 2.5% of America's wealth. A leader who conversely supports sharing threatens the enrichment of the owners. Such a leader can't breathe without being excoriated, while the king of ownership breaks laws with impunity. To help owners own more, our current government is regressing into its past to focus on ownership's interests in trade and war, to jettison support for people, and to replace taxes with funding sources that go light on owners. That's my bird's eye view of the path that's gotten us to this point and of our current predicament. Given this, I encourage us all to envision a path forward. I envision a future in which sharing and ownership balance. Although ownership and accumulated wealth and power corrupt people, I do not suggest putting ownership back in a bottle. I like owning a house. Yet I do see the need for curbs on ownership and support for sharing. One rule to curb owning: you can do with what you want with what you own until that hurts someone else. So if I own land with a little creek, I can build a bridge over the channel, but I can't dump arsenic in the water because that would hurt someone downstream. To curb ownership further, I reject privatizing efforts as schemes to help owners own more, and instead support expanding the shared public domain. More public education, libraries, healthcare, childcare, housing, research, broadcasting, utilities, transportation, lands, and social safety nets. I support public funding of elections so owners don't own our policymakers. I support shifting influence from few to many. One example, by amending the Constitution, which now gives the president blanket executive power. Instead, the Constitution could read, "The President of the United States shall execute laws passed by Congress." That would shift federal policy-making power from the one president to the 535 lawmakers in Congress. I support transnational actions, international conferences, agreements, and laws with teeth that can restrain autocratic owners. Such teeth would include giving the International Criminal Court jurisdictional power to arrest, try, and jail officials from any country who break international laws. I suggest the international quality of sharing includes sharing the earth with all of life, such that healthy and then abundant life supports our lives. I saw an example of sharing in Japan, in Japan's Imperial Palace Gardens. In one such garden, I came to a small creek, mossy boulders, an arching footbridge, some cool, gnarly pine trees, and the sound of moving water. Years ago, royalty owned these gardens. A peasant like me would have been blocked from entry by an angry man brandishing a sword. Now, all of Japan owns these gardens, and anyone with the equivalent in yen of $3.50 can be soothed by its beauty, compose haiku, and snap photos. But we are not there yet. For now, our predicament is taking us on a journey into a wilderness, like a dark night that is so dark it's hard to see a way forward sometimes. Yet on any journey, one encounters spiritual support and a spark of light. This support reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend commenting on his mother, into her late 90s, aware of politics and pretty cheerful. My friend saw this mood as reflecting her faith. My friend and his mother are Black, and their family comes from Oklahoma, where in 1921, white rioters burned a Black neighborhood in Tulsa. Faith supported people as they kept putting one foot in front of the other, such that here is my friend, a neuropsychologist who helped train me in psychology. Faith gives the sense that God is on one side. God shares or sides with sharing by disapproving of murder and theft by an owner king, and by contrasting that with the sharing of loaves and fishes. The Spirit is on our side further as it gives us the raw materials of life and love. It says yes to being alive, provides energy that keeps us moving through darkness. This journey reminds me of the first noble truth of Buddhism, which could be translated as, you don't get the world you want. And yet Buddhism offers a path to awakened acceptance. Buddhists train not to fight the world or withdraw from the world, but be awake to it. The title, the Buddha, is translated as the awakened one. Awake, we see clearly what is, and what is includes a unity of all things, which gives us peace. Similarly, in secular terms, people can respond to the world by withdrawing, pushing back, and/or meeting needs. There is a time for each. Sometimes I crawl under a blanket. The pushing back involves the word no. At protests, I see signs: no kings, no ice. Then there is meeting needs. I need cooperation and sharing with others, which meets my need for security. A MAGA supporter has needs, maybe to control a world that is changing around them, which would give them security. If I were speaking to someone like this, I would hope to bring enough composure not to point out their illogic, but to inquire into the person's needs in search of some shared needs. As we consider each other's needs, we would be fulfilling my vision of a shared world. The theologian Martin Buber might call this an I-thou encounter, with God's support present in the space between ourselves. Our current crisis resembles, to me, wartime with us as soldiers. We all want the war to end, but in this time, we may be more alive than usual, experiencing emotions with unexpected depth and range, more open to receiving spiritual support, more generous, more united with our brothers and sisters. Indeed, while soldiers fight on behalf of an idea like freedom, even more for a soldier it is to support the soldier next to them, to support you. People's sharing and union with other people motivate sometimes heroic generosity and willingness to take risks to protect someone else. We see this as people confront ICE officers. We saw this as people exited the World Trade Center on 9/11. You heard, "No, you go ahead. No, after you. No, please." And during war, people yearn for the good, for peace. Yearning now means not just saying no to excessive ownership, but yes to a world in which sharing and owning balance. It helps my state of mind to know that to which I am saying yes. And I believe it is politically powerful to say yes to something great. Make the owners say no. In spiritual terms, yearning directs our energy to spiritual sources which we do not control, but which do bring us infinite support. Throughout history, people have lifted their yearning in prayer. Indeed, I pray, dear God, Spirit of life, unity of all, source of infinite support, ownership today is running over people's lives. As we stand for people and for all of life, give us your supportive breath of life. Show us the abundance of your support, filling us such that we have support to share with our brothers and sisters. And when enveloped by darkness, let there be light. Amen. Well, at this time in the service, we have an opportunity for sharing. Let us take the offering. At this time in the service, I invite those who wish to share a joy or a concern, something we may celebrate together, or something for which you would like the healing energy of our shared meditation.
So I can see about you. Happy New Year. I will start this by saying I told Tracy. I wasn't sick yesterday to come to the meeting. Something happened in my life that really made me sad. I had an older brother who was unique, unusual. He grew up pretty much on his own and he was able to all of the If it wasn't for his friend Joe, who was 3 years old, she's even really dead, he would have never made it in life. But she was this really unique, unusual, special woman who took him in every time he was about to go way too far over the edge. She was funny, and she was nice, and she was generous, and she was so lovely. And she, throughout the years, the daughter of she was like a pretty wild woman herself, but she just had the magic touch of whatever she said was like. So yesterday morning, I got a phone call that she had passed away. And I was so sad, but what I want to say to you all is I'm so grateful that my brother Harry was like, and I'm so glad to know her. And I can't quite figure out how she did the Joe was so special to me. But I also want to thank you for your words today. They were beautiful. And that's all. Thank you. That's all.
Well, I made a decision within the last couple of weeks that I didn't really see coming. I've been working at First Community College for decades, and I had several roles, teaching, advising, work with students with disabilities, and my biggest role is work with students with disabilities. And within the last few, I always thought, like, people would say, well, why are you still working? I'm so old. But, you know, I mean, I really liked it, loved it, like, right up until, like, a couple weeks before Christmas, but I have a supervisor who seems decidedly uninterested, but I'm not mentioning any names, decidedly slack about the work we do with disabled students at the community college. And it just kept happening, and I started feeling like I couldn't sleep well at night, even when I was blessed to have my grandchildren here with the first minute. And I said, if I were 40, I think I'd, stand my ground and fight it. But it became clear that I wasn't enjoying it in the same way. So things became much more about data collection and making students redisclose their disability or present that social group that was working. A lot of really bad administration. So, and I'm not including the whole college or there's more people there. What about the other side over here? And, anyways, I made that decision. So as of the beginning of February, I'm not a disability coordinator anymore, and it seemed like the right thing to do. And I'm actually kind of glad about it. I feel like something slipped off my shoulders, but I hope things can turn around in that office.
Does that mean you're retirement?
I'm still doing some what they call seasonal advising, like during high registration periods, I would go in and help students for visitors. So I'll hang on to that, but that's not going to be. So that's my story. Thank you.
So I wanted to mention how when we saw Anne Fox in October, she was talking about joy matters. That was her sermon. And much of it was very similar to what we talked about today, how all those wonderful attitudes that would, I think, belong in the New York Times editorial, to share with the world. But when she was talking about hope matters, she said, she was talking about the state of the world, and that you could still find hope. And one of her quotes was, "We will all find a better way." She had faith that would happen. And she said, for one thing, UCAL Berkeley has joy exercises. Go on the line and how to become joyful. Well, I didn't do that. She also mentioned that there were trolls in Maine. Trolls. No. So, I didn't do that either. But this week I found out there are 5 trolls here in Rhode Island. They're massive structures that are made out of recycled materials, and they are their inspiration. Oh my God, they're awesome! I have pictures and I will show you. I haven't once to see them. So their inspiration is to encourage people to take walks in nature. They're not too far from the parking lot, but they're not accessible for everyone exactly. But that'll come, perhaps. And they talk a lot. Their story is about recycling, and they are stunning. They're so I found my joy yesterday for the weekend, maybe for the week. When I was on my truck for trolls. They were wonderful. These love Good morning, everybody. Happy to be back. Happy to have you. I'm sad to leave sunny home Florida, but something that I really took away from being here for a few weeks that I was there is a sense of community. Like the sermon today, that's something I feel like I have here, which is great. Just have to figure out how to get in some of the stuff that I was doing down there that I really loved. Like pickleball and cards and dominoes and things like that. So I'm trying to figure out how to
do that here. But it was a good trip, and mom's doing really well for her second new place. Actually, one of the people that I was playing the games with, he's from South Dakota, he's been in the Rear Patrol. We were actually talking about that, and so funny you bring that up. It is on my list of things to do.
That was a great sermon, I liked it, I enjoyed it. I don't think you went far enough, though. You know, we've got a leadership class, you know, worldwide, right? Global elite, right? You know, I don't know if you know the name Klaus Schwab. He's the head of the World Economic Forum. You know, his big refrain is, you will own nothing. This is for the world. You will own nothing, but you will be happy. Now that's a great, you know, ideal, right? None of us will own anything. We'll share everything we have. You won't own a house. You'll share a living accommodation, right, with someone else. The problem, like in my mind, right, you know, that's wonderful sentiments. It's wonderful attitude. But these people who are saying all of this stuff at the top, and this is both sides, so I'm not trying to, right? While they're telling us poor people that we need to share our meager resources, they're piling all the stuff everything that they can grab, right, and put it in their back pockets. And that's, I mean, you know, you go one side, right, that's in bed with big tech, big pharma, right, big industry, right, and they're claiming that, oh, we're for the poor, right, while they're raking us over the coals. And you've got the other side just raking us over the coals, saying, hey, every man for himself, you know, go for it. You know, we'll give you some breaks along the way, but you're on your own. There's like nothing in between. And we gotta get rid of those people. You know, we gotta get rid of the people that own, like, you know, 15,000 apartments, right? You know, and they're telling the poor people who are trying to rent something that, oh, I need to bring in roommates so I can afford this stupid apartment, right? I mean, there's something like really broken in the system. And to be lectured, you know, that I'm not moral enough to share my meager resources, you know, is not going to solve the problem, right? That is not the solution to the problem, right? We really need to sit down and we need to figure out how we're going to go forward with all of this. You mentioned Ponzi schemes. Oh, you know, we're going to ship. No, those were Ponzi schemes specifically, right, built, right, in order to dupe the public into thinking that the government's there to help them, right? They're not. And you know what? You know, I will watch that PBS special, right? That 6-part special in 12 hours or 14 hours on the American Revolution. And, you know, one thing that, you know, maybe I was watching for, but it came out really, really clearly, is that whole revolution was about the rich wanting more power for themselves, right? And screw the king. I mean, that's what the whole thing was about. I mean, it wasn't about the poor schmuck that was, you know, trying to make a living or you wanted freedom from you know, being oppressed by this religion. It had nothing to do with that. That was, we just, you know, strung them along because they were the ones that were fighting the war for us. But we were raking it all in the back room. I mean, that's how, and you know, I don't know if you watched it, right? It was amazing to me, like, it took the people who were fighting years to collect the money that the government owed them for fighting. So it was like this idea that we just, you know, like, don't respect our veterans is like, this is going all the way back from the very beginning. We never respected our veterans. I mean, in World War II, right? We had MacArthur, you know, just destroying the protesters on the green in Washington. All the veterans that wanted their pay, you know, from World War II. I mean, you know, this is the country we live in. We need to develop somehow, some way of being honest enough with each other that we can say that this is actually what's happening and we want to stop it. And we have it, right? We have it. We got ideologues and mouthpieces. I mean, you look at, Massachusetts. I'm totally disgusted with the leadership in Massachusetts. They don't want us to talk about anything. You look at Minnesota, right, with all the fraud. They don't want to admit it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to deal with it. They think it's all right. This is wonderful. I mean, that kind of stuff has to stop. Because the rich, and you mentioned the statistics, are just raking it in. And this has been, in my lifetime, I think, probably, since Reagan really started the process. But then, I guess that, the 80s when we had, it's definitely been since Reagan that dichotomy between the classes has increased. And now we have two political parties that are both supporting one class, the rich. And, I don't know what the solution is, but, just to espouse the principles of sharing, right, isn't enough. Because we try to share as much as we can, and we're going backwards. And there's a lot of people that, like to point the finger and say, well, you don't share enough, but they're not going backwards. So, I don't know. I mean, it's a dilemma for my generation, I guess. I haven't got a solution. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comments.
I just have one quick thing. I watched something the other day on Friday. It was on my TikTok. It's in a far country. I don't know if it was called Cabo, but it was about a walk for peace. And I saw this, that there were, it could have been thousands or millions. It was just a direct line through the whole country that had, all these people had one thing in common. They were praising Jesus. They were singing hymns. They were walking for peace. And they were all singing these religious songs as they were going. And the look that I saw and the power that I felt, it felt so good because of all the stuff that goes on in our country, the violence around the world. This one thing happened, it was a walk for peace. And it was so beautiful because no matter what any of those people have in their life, they all have one in common. They all decided to walk. And it was just, it was beautiful. They had the lights, flashlights, candles, but the harmony, when I turned up the speaker and I heard it, you could hear the flow of the music. And the music was so good, I felt it all the way from my heart, that I thought that Jesus was coming through me, through the power of these people. And it was just like I said, it could have been 1 million, it could have been 2 million people, but it was so beautiful that they all had that one thing in common. And that one thing was because they were praising Jesus and peace. And that's what we need. And if we have protests and all this other anger, stop it. Let's get together and call peace. If they can get together in a country that's so far away from us, and be able to get together and form that was beautiful. And that inspired me so much and made me feel good that I have one thing in common with a lot of people, is God. And it just feels so good that to see something like that was so beautiful. And it was on TikTok. And if anybody on TikTok will probably can view that and find those people. It was the most inspiring and beautiful thing I could ever see. And feel, and I felt it deep inside.
Thanks, Donald. Yeah, you use the words inspire. The spire part of inspire relates to spiritus, which is Latin for breath, which means you are taking in a breath, but also infused with the Spirit. And that's a sort of a story of awe. Thank you. Well, with some hope, Let us sing together a hymn, We'll Build a Land, number 121 in your hymnal. Thank you. I want to thank Nancy and Richard and Donald and all of you, everybody, for sharing a service today and being a community. I hope that on your journeys, you find support from this community and from spiritual sources leading you towards peace and justice. Amen.